we took RESAAS public, not just pre-revenue, but really pre-product. It was a good idea. We had a prototype. It wasn't bulletproof. It wasn't scale. It wasn't enterprise ready at all. We were able to do that in Canada because in Canada, there's a lot more of a venture mindset when it comes to public companies. I think in the US, the mindset of going public is big IPO. At that point, you're worth a considerable amount of money, big market cap, big fanfare. And I think because we're in Canada, we were able to take a company that was really, really early stage, public in a successful manner.
Welcome to Canada Now. I'm Ashley Smith, and every week we dig into the bold ideas, real stories, and fresh perspectives shaping Canada's future. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Canada Now, the show where we explore the ideas, leaders, and innovations shaping the future of Canada. I'm your host, Ashley Smith. Today, I'm joined by someone who has quietly built one of Canada's most global-facing technology companies. Tom Rossiter is the president and CEO of RESAAS, a Vancouver-based publicly traded Proptech company whose platform is used by some of the biggest real estate brands in the world. Under Tom's leadership, RESAAS has evolved from a startup into a multi-award-winning global data and intelligence platform with customers across more than 160 countries. Before RESAAS, Tom spent years in the UK and Canada leading digital strategy for major global brands like Nike, Sony, Adobe, Nokia, and Samsung. Experience that shaped how he approaches product, sale, and building technology with real-world impact. He's been recognized as one of Business in Vancouver's top 40 under 40, served on multiple boards, mentored founders through the Reach Accelerator program, and is widely known as a thought leader in international real estate trends and accessible design. Today, we're going beyond real estate to talk about what it actually takes to build and scale a Canadian tech company, the realities of leading a public company, and what Tom sees coming next for data, innovation, and global markets. Tom, welcome to Canada Now.
Thank you, Ashley. What a treat to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it. I always like to give the audience a little bit of context in terms of how I might know the guest. And I've sort of known you from afar for several years, a little bit through the Reach Accelerator program. But really, I've mostly seen the progress of what you've been building as just a consumer and out in the world. So I want to dive into that. But first, I would love to get a little bit of your origin story as a leader professionally. Can you tell me a little bit about your background that may not be so obvious to our listeners?
Yeah, happy to. And thanks for having me on the show. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, my background was I wanted to be in the motorsports industry and failed at that for not being too fast and too heavy. Mm-hmm. And then found myself in the world of design agency and the whole agency scene in London and England. That was a ton of fun. It's high tempo. It's fast paced. Agency life, as I think you know and you're aware, it's so fun because there's always a deadline. The variety of clients is always varied, and so the content is always changing. It's a real blast to be part of. The company that I was with in London, I helped move and expand out to the West Coast here in beautiful Vancouver. And we loved it because we went from an 8-hour workday in the UK to a 16-hour workday by adding the two time zones together. And it was a ton of fun. And that brought me out here to Vancouver. Where RESAAS came from as a thesis was we had some spare time as we opened up our new agency in Vancouver. And we wanted to fill our time with some pet projects, some side hustles, some ideas that we had. And having moved out here and not known anybody, some of the first people that I got to meet were real estate agents. Mm-hmm. Because as you know, as you exemplify, they're very social professionals that always like to reach out and make new connections. And so as I tried to build a social circle in Vancouver, a lot of those people, a lot of those faces were real estate agents. And we got to see how social and how collaborative and how relational agents are, how this whole industry is. And so our idea was, why don't we try and digitize that? Why don't we try and amplify how social real estate agents are, but through technology? And if we can do it, then we give them some kind of scale, we give them some kind of power of the collective, and that was our idea. Mm-hmm. And so we tried it as a little project and we rolled it out, and it was either going to fail or it was going to go pretty well. A few people told us we were crazy and that there's no trust in real estate and that this kind of thing would never work. But when we turned it on, it started to stick and it quickly started to rip, and I think we knew pretty early on that we were onto something. Mm-hmm.
Just for context, can you give me a bit of an idea of when this idea was born? Like what year era were we in?
So I moved out from the UK to Canada in 2007. We probably started to kick this around in 2008. So this was right when Facebook was getting really hot and everyone was on that train. And so, without getting too prescriptive, our idea was, let's just take some of the benefits of what Facebook offers everybody globally, but apply it to a particular industry of real estate and see how that would land in the profession.
I want to dive into the growth story, but maybe just for our audience, you can give us an overview of what has RESAAS become. What's its primary function? Who are its users? What do they do with it?
RESAAS was started to try and bring an industry together. Again, as I said, there wasn't a feeling of a lot of trust within real estate on a national level and certainly on a global stage 10, 12 years ago. And so we wanted to try and bring the industry together to demonstrate that with trust and collaboration, good things can happen to all of its participants. And so as we rolled it out and offered it to agents, and RESAAS is just for licensed agents and brokers, so it's not for the public, it's not for homeowners or buyers or sellers, it's just the industry. And as we rolled it out, we saw pretty quickly in the markets where we seeded it that it started to catch. And I think one of the things we did right in the early days was make it what we call brokerage agnostic. So regardless of where an agent hangs their license and which brokerage they operate through, we didn't matter to us. And I think that allowed us to attract agents in different markets with different companies. Because as you know, from being in the industry yourself, it isn't necessarily the other agent's brokerage that determines whether you want to work with them or whether they're good or bad. It's the agent themselves. And so as we did that and the groundswell started to happen, we went through the hundreds and then the thousands and then the tens of thousands of agents starting to use RESAAS. And we saw pretty quickly some of the trends that emerged. Fast forward to now, we're in 160 countries. We've got close to 700,000 agents globally that use our platform to collaborate and share opportunities and deals and referrals. And we've ended up partnering and working with some of the biggest brokerages and agencies within not just residential real estate, which is our sweet spot, but more recently, commercial real estate as well.
And I know you do like some white labeling just to kind of give context of the different types of offering that RESAAS has, just so when people are listening, they have a sense of the types of relationships maybe you have.
Yeah, so we have our core platform, which is if you're Ashley the agent, which you are, you can register and join and be part of this global network that we've built and facilitate. And that's worthwhile for you because you become part of the industry, you're part of the network, you're part of this global referral platform where you'll likely receive new referral business from other agents around the world. What we've seen over the years is where there's a density of agents with a certain brokerage, we'll often go to that company and say, just so you know, a few thousand of your agents are using RESAAS independently. Why don't you get behind it corporately, put a bow on it, brand it as your own, and try and activate your own network of agents. And it's funny, a number of global real estate brands have a big footprint, but they often don't know how their network really operates and when it comes to referrals and migration and relocation, they really don't generally know how their global network really operates. And I think we do a good job at that. So yeah, we do the white label or the private label as we call it now, where we'll plug into a brand, they'll engage us, we'll color it, we'll brand it, we'll make it specific to them, we'll lock it down with integrations. And then these large global real estate companies get a turnkey global referral platform that gives them incredible insights into what their network is actually doing.
I want to go back a little bit to the beginning and going from an idea to this very robust integrated system that you now have. And in preparation for this conversation, I was looking into some conversations you've had previously. And what I found really interesting was how you scaled. And so going public as a company at what seems to be like quite an early stage. And one of the things that you said that caught me a little bit off guard was that it was sort of the natural choice in many ways because of the ways that Canadians invest. And it seems counterintuitive and it seems quite different than what we tend to see, the way that we tend to see tech companies thinking about growth, particularly, I guess, from a maybe more US sort of point of view. But I think it's just very easy as, let's say, a young entrepreneur founder to adopt what might appear to be best practices for growth and scaling. So can you tell me a little bit about that and why was I confused about that approach.
I don't think you were confused. I think it's a very common perception. So happy to share all of this with you.
Yes,
so for context, so RESAAS is a public company in Canada. We trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange, the venture exchange they have here. And you're right, we took RESAAS public, not just pre-revenue, but really pre-product.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a good idea. We had a prototype. It wasn't bulletproof. It wasn't scale. It wasn't enterprise ready at all. And we were able to do that in Canada because in Canada, there's a lot more of a venture mindset when it comes to public companies. Okay, so think of the typical Canadian investor landscape, a lot of oil and gas, a lot of mining, and a lot of that is based on an idea, right? We think we found something underground. Let's take a company public. Let's raise some capital. Let's buy some machinery. Let's drill a big hole and let's see. And that's similar in nature to what we thought RESAAS might be. It was we had aspirations that this could become something really big, but we weren't entirely sure. And I think because we're in Canada, we were able to take a company that was really, really early stage, public in a successful manner. You're right. I think in the US, the mindset of going public is big IPO. At that point, you're worth a considerable amount of money, big market cap, big fanfare. That's not necessarily the case in Canada. And it's funny, over the years, as we've met different companies and different entrepreneurs, and they're looking at the, how do I fund my company question at the beginning of their journey. I think the default is, let's go raise money privately from the venture community or VCs or whatever it might be. And that works. It usually works for the company. It comes with, other considerations and some handcuffs and that kind of thing. With being public, it's been a really interesting experience for us. One of the main benefits that we see is that we were able to offer anyone the ability to invest in our company early on. Okay, so if you had any idea about real estate or you took the time to understand our story and our strategy, and you liked it, as an individual investor, you were able to invest in RESAAS as a public company and then participate in that growth as the company continues to grow its value over time. If we had been private, A, probably wouldn't have been able to be in the deal, and B, your money's then tied up and it's not liquid. And we've got mutual friends that operate a lot of private companies that take investments. Those investors probably won't see any liquidity for several years, right? And that's fine and that's standard. And I think people getting into that know that. But to us, one of the benefits of going public here in Canada, because we could, is to let people participate. It's liquid. They can roll into the stock or out of the stock anytime they want to. And I think if they took the time to understand what this company could become and is starting to become now, and they wanted to participate in the growth of that and all the upside, then being public allows them a great vehicle to do that.
Are there any other hurdles besides maybe the misconceptions or lack of exposure to this strategy? Like, why else would founders not be exploring this avenue? Are there certain boxes that need to be checked that may be difficult?
Yeah, it's different, and it's, as you say, it's not the standard path that everyone's led to believe. And I think the biggest perhaps hurdle is that it's just not widely known, right? I think the perception is going public is a big, almost exit event, a big liquidity moment for your early stage investors. Again, in Canada, that's not strictly the case. And so I think a big part needs to come from the awareness side of things. I think in Canada, there's the Toronto Stock Exchange. There's the Canadian Securities Exchange as well, the CSE. And they work hard amongst early stage companies to educate them that going public is an option. There's other costs with being public. You've got filing fees, you've got audit fees, you need a good lawyer. There's additional costs involved in being public compared to being private. But it's one of those situations where you've got to weigh up what's the benefit, what's the value. And I think if you ask any early stage company that's gone public, what's one of the reasons to do it? I think it's ease and access to capital is probably one of the most common responses. It seems to be a more beneficial approach to raising capital for certain types of companies in certain sectors than grinding it out on the private path.
Were there any big surprises? I guess I'm wondering, did you have anybody sort of holding your hand as you went through this process and then figuring out, how to effectively run an organization that now has I don't even know if I'm using the right language, frankly, like public shareholders. Correct me. Can you give me some insight into what that means? It's not just about getting access to capital, but there's other responsibilities, perhaps besides the filings.
Yeah, your terminology is good.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
so
you.
the big part to it is corporate governance, right? You have to have a board of directors. We have responsibilities. So the role of the board of directors is to represent shareholder interests. Okay, and then the board of directors make sure that the company and management executes on its plan to deliver value to shareholders. All the public companies we read about in the press every day, they're all huge. Okay, and so as a company going public early, we're really wearing two distinct hats. There's the business side of the business, right? Like grow your business, build a team, develop your product, try and hope that you find product market fit, sell, get customers, grow, right? Like that whole playbook, the core part of running a business. And then the other side to it is running the public company entity. It's a different beast altogether. What we found is that they don't always go in sync. And oftentimes when the business is having a great run and we're winning new accounts and new agreements with new customers and everything's kind of up and to the right, oftentimes we're so focused on the business that we just don't have enough time in the day to focus on the stock side of the business, the public market side of the business in terms of press releases or meetings or presentations, right? So there's a bit of a disconnect. What we found though, and I think with RESAAS too, because it's an industry platform that you have to be a licensed agent or broker to use, it's a bit of a black box if you're not one of those professionals, right? So our average shareholder who's not a realtor or a broker, they can't come in and use RESAAS, right? So like, how do they know how it's going? They can't see it. And so we've learned over the years that press releases are a public company's best friend. They're one of our pieces of value that we can use to deliver messages and provide updates to our shareholders and prospective investors. And so, yeah, it's a different beast. It's almost like a separate company. But we found, amongst all of the noise and all of the experience we've had, what we found is if you really focus on the business and you execute against your business plan, you really focus on driving growth within the company, then the valuation of the company, the market, the stock, everything that's in that world will follow in the end.
I'm just thinking about you as a relatively young man doing all of this, and in many ways for the first time. Like clearly you had professional experience and expertise with your career previously, but just the I don't want to say growing pains, but the learning curve and from a leadership standpoint and growth, how did you navigate that part? So like, how did you find talent and how has that side of things evolved as you've evolved? How do you think about your team and talent and what you do versus what you don't do as the CEO as the years have gone by?
That question. Yeah, it's tricky. Trying to find good talent is hard. We've always had a concept at RESAAS that we try and hire people for who they are and the values they have, the skills they have, rather than for a particular role or a particular bum in a seat. And I think that's generally done us well over the time we've been operating. Everyone with the company now has been here for over 10 years. So I think that's a testament to that. As it relates to how did we know what we were doing, how did we try and minimize the mistakes that everyone makes along the way, we've brought in some good advisors over the years. On our board of directors, we've got a couple of directors that have been in the public company space for a number of years. And so we've got some good experience there. But being Vancouver-based, we do have an abundance of talent here, certainly in the tech sector. I remember when I moved here in 2007, the draw, honestly, was the mountains, Ashley. But being in the agency world, being in the design sector, then becoming more of a technologist, this place was popping off in 07, 08. I feel like every major tech company was opening up offices in Vancouver. And it was, as you know, it was regarded as Silicon Valley North. And so it was a cool place to be. Still is. It's still a big village. You see the same faces doing different things here and there. But we've been fortunate in that there's just been a real deep pool of talent in Vancouver that we could tap into. And as we've grown the company over the years through different stages, we haven't ever really had to hire anyone out of Vancouver. It's been fairly local.
Mm-hmm.
With COVID, we went remote and we've stayed remote.
Okay, yeah.
And that's been a pretty big hit with the team. Ironically, output is up. So I think, let's not get onto AI yet, but like pre-AI, we were probably 25% more efficient once we went remote compared to being in an office. Because again, a lot of our company is developers and software engineers and technologists. And then obviously with the advent of AI, production has been accelerated no end. So we tried to hire locally. We found it quite easy because there's good talent in town. And we're excited for some upcoming growth catalysts that we have and some more local hiring as well.
That's awesome. I hope I remember to come back to all the different places my mind just went as you spoke. But I do want to just dig a little deeper on that advisory piece because I hadn't thought about it until you just mentioned this I think it's typical that when you go the private capital raise route, a lot of your advisory relationships come through investors. And so that's clearly not the same, direction that you took. So you mentioned there's talent and there's really impressive people around that you were able to speak to. But how did you lean in to find the right people? How did you know what you didn't know? Like, how did you know what areas you needed the most support in?
Yeah, do you ask everyone that question? Because that's if you can solve that, that's the ticket, I think, for any professional in any industry. I think that like everybody, we make a ton of mistakes. You don't know what you don't know until you finally get there, and then it's, you have to figure it out. I think with RESAAS and being public, we were able to raise enough capital to build what we wanted to build in the right way. And we were fortunate enough to partner with Microsoft and build most of our technology. So the platform that runs RESAAS has become this big global data platform. We built a lot of it with Microsoft in their campus down in Redmond, just across the border. So that was cool. And we've had the time, and I would label it as a luxury to focus on the product, to really nail it. Because what we tried to do is bring together an industry that was a little bit fractured, right? On a local scale, like you go to all the events. I know you're involved in the real estate board. We can touch on that in a sec. But locally, agents come together, they collaborate, they share. It's a beautiful thing. And when agents like you lean into that, good things happen. Our challenge and our goal was, how do we replicate that, but globally, right? And so we felt we could only accomplish that by focusing on a really solid product that was underscored by trust. And so along the way, we got to meet all these different people from all the corners of real estate in different countries with different companies, different associations, different boards, agents, brokers, franchise sales, governance, MLS, like the whole spectrum. And so what we managed to do was meet all these people, and we generally have had consistent positive feedback about what RESAAS has been trying to do all these years. And over time, these faces, these people emerge as within their micro sector of real estate as real thought leaders, as real champions of change, as real people that are outspoken but in the right kind of way. And so as we were looking to say, okay, well, we want to go global, who do we know that knows international real estate really well? We look at the network we've built. That starts the process to try and pick an advisor. We want to go luxury, who's that? We want to go commercial, who should we talk to? Because we don't know those things before we enter into it. And so again, I think our mindset has been focus on the business, focus on product market fit, which everyone talks a lot about. And in doing so, attract the right kind of attention. And then as we decide to go and follow a new path or a new growth channel, who are the people that we know in our universe that we could align with and bring into the team to try and guide us on the right way?
You've really led me into the segue that I wanted to go into, and that's about that global scaling. And so you've given us the piece about finding some of the right bridges, maybe the folks who can connect you with the industry in different parts of the world. How did you take the appropriate steps after kind of learning about those markets, where you might fit in terms of deciding where to scale first, deciding what maybe, I'm sure language is a huge issue that you consider. And this, I'm sure you were looking at translation or different language aspects to your product crazy AI integrations. So tell me a little bit about that navigation piece, because I think that's what most Canadian companies want to do, is they want to serve clients in Canada and they want to then find clients and customers outside of Canada.
They do, yeah. And so you're a mentor on the REACH program that the National Association of Realtors puts on, and that's one of the ways that we got to know each other. And so you and I have the luxury of meeting so many of these companies that are often bright-eyed and bushy-tailed coming into the industry. And when they're based in Canada, usually they've come up with their idea based on a problem they've seen locally. And then quickly they realize that the market in Canada is so big, and there are bigger markets once they start to expand. And oftentimes, I think founders are scared of what that leap looks like, right? Like they understand Canada, it's 1-2 languages if you include French, which a lot of them should. But then once you go across the border, it's not as easy as everyone thinks. We found, so again, real estate is at the industry we're serving at the moment. As you know, it's consistently inconsistent. And so it varies. I mean, even in Canada, it varies so much here. But as we've gone to the US, as we've gone into Europe, as we've gone into Asia, every time it's a different ball of wax. So there's the product pieces that we can control. So how do we serve a product in more than just English and more than just French? And how do we make it multilingual across not just 5, 10, but several dozen languages? Then you've got currency. Then you've got units, right? So square feet, square meters. And then beyond all of that, that's just a product. You've then got the way that the industry operates.
Right.
Okay. So at that point, all bets are off. And so you go from the world of North America, where it's very organized, there's layers to the cake in real estate. I know you've had Jeff King on here, who is perhaps the best person in Vancouver to guide us all on that. But as you go to different markets around the world, it's all different. So in Egypt, you have a fixer. And the fixer's you're essentially the agent, but they run around and they'll uncover listings and they'll bring it to you, and it's a different world. In the UK, you don't need to be licensed.
Yeah.
So you could be a salesperson in a clothing store on a Monday, and you could join a real estate company or an estate agency, as they call them there, and you're helping clients sell their home by the end of the week, right? So it's a really different experience as you look to different markets. I think RESAAS has done well globally because we try not to prescribe too much. Real estate takes its course in its own little variations globally. All we really focus on is how do we bring the really diligent professionals that have high integrity, how do we bring them together in a way that's really accessible, really easy, really intuitive, so that they can use the power of the collective, use their own networking effect for their benefit. And we focus on that. And I guess that's our North Star, is how do we bring an industry together so they can lean on each other? And because of that, it's done really good things in all the markets it's gone into. It's done really good things in all the companies it's gone into. And so that's where we've focused our time. And I think that's why we've had success on the global stage.
And how does that look functionally in terms of product market fit and product development? How are you tapping into what's working and what's not working? What does the feedback loop look like? And how do you make decisions on what's like a niche issue versus a real thing that could, add a lot of value?
Yeah. So in the olden days, we would have people do that, and we would anecdotally hear things. We would look at trends manually. We would try and make decisions. We'd get feedback. And we have a support desk that hears from our users, agents and brokers, like pretty frequently. They're very vocal. That's how it has been for a number of years. I'd say now, with the advent of AI, a lot of that is becoming more and more hands-free and honestly more accurate. So we know when we roll out a change very quickly with all of the telemetry and tracking and the data logging that we do, we have systems now that just tell us, is this being used? Are people dropping off? Is there abandonment? Is it speeding up the process? And RESAAS is a data platform at the end of the day, so much unique data. And we're using that for our clients' benefit, but we're also using it internally to let it tell us how is it going. And there's pretty quick ways we can do U-turns and make adjustments and adjust things on the fly.
Yeah, let's lean a little bit more into AI. I think what I'm wondering for folks who maybe have been running technology companies, let's call it small to medium, like small, medium size companies, that tools are clearly working. They have a strong customer base. Do you find, even just from speaking to, say, your peers, that folks have a hard time taking a leap into like deciding where to bring in innovation and like how to decide on what tools or what platform to integrate with? Like, how do you make those decisions and move at a speed that's at the pace of business? Because I think that's one of the things, one of the themes I'm hearing as I'm moving along with this series is that's pace of decision making can sometimes be our competitive disadvantage as Canadians. So how do you navigate fast-paced change and make a decision and move forward?
It's the nature of Canadians.
Maybe you're not coming from Canada originally, so maybe that's influenced.
No, well, I have a Canadian passport. So as it relates to AI, I think it's obviously topic du jour, has been for a couple of years. I think everyone's talking about it. I think very few people are actually implementing it in any kind of useful way beyond a few idle questions to some AI model, right? Like that's, I think, what everyone's doing. What we've seen work within our company and other companies that we're close to is, one, like committing to doing it, right? It's like anything, even with, I don't know, exercise, it's all good thinking about it, but until you commit to doing it and then keep doing it, that's when you start to see any kind of gain. And I think the companies that we've seen, and I think ourselves included, we picked a few lanes around AI. And I think initially we were a little skeptical, weren't really sure, could we do it quicker ourselves? And then the tides turned, and suddenly now tooling has got quicker, models have got better. I think as users, we're all learning to prompt and use these different systems in a better way than we did before. And the pace is just skyrocketing. So, I would say look at the ways that different businesses do things today. Where are the natural places where time seems to go? Which of those tasks can be automated, can be improved, can get better quality, or can be sped up, or all of those with AI? And then pick a model to get behind and start to use it. And I think it's one of those things, as we were talking about before we started taping, the more you prompt it, the more you use it, the more you converse with it, the more value you get over time. What we found is it kind of naturally guides you, and it sounds a little crazy, but that's what we've seen internally with our own team. It's what I've seen with peers and other companies. And so, yeah, I think trying to not be typically Canadian and, standoffish and really leaning into it. The caveat I would say is, quality check some of the output, especially if you get really deep with some of the asks, because models can only be as good as what they're fed. And a lot of the good content isn't in the public domain. So I think we've seen a couple of instances where the output you get from an AI model isn't exactly accurate. And I think everyone kind of forgets the small disclaimer that that's the case. So I'd say if anyone's going deep with leaning on AI, don't blindly trust the output and perhaps double check it before you roll with it. Right.
Yeah, that's good advice. And Tom's alluding to me referencing that I know my AI pretty intimately, or at least it knows me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but that's why I'm able to bring these shows forward.
It works.
It's working. I guess I'm wondering, what was the moment for you where you realized RESAAS was shifting into a new gear? Like, was there a moment where you were steady and things were growing and then suddenly you were catapulted? Did that happen? And then if yes, what did you do? How did you manage it?
I think we were early.
Yeah.
I think that we had a really different lens on the industry. And I think we came out and I don't think the industry was ready. And there have been some agents, some teams, some smaller brokerages that leaned into it early on and were way ahead of the pack and exploited the benefits they got from RESAAS to their huge advantage. I would say with the industry tempo normalizing the last 3-4 years for all the reasons we've talked about till we're blue in the face. I think that's been a time that the industry has finally said, okay, well, what things should I be doing to try and become better, to try and help myself, to try and help others around me? And I think that's where we fit. I think this year, 2025, has been a breakout year for RESAAS. We've got a number of global companies that have signed up to deploy what we've built on a massive international scale. We've found our rhythm in the world of commercial real estate, which is, as you know, an entirely different beast. And we're working with some pretty large institutions on that front. Again, different animal, different side of the business to our residential platform. But it's been fascinating. And I think what we love about real estate is that there's seasonality to it and there's cycles. But as we keep improving our platform, as we keep reacting to the feedback we get from our customers, I hope that we're staying a couple steps ahead of the plane of the industry, and people that are using it, I think they're benefiting from that as well.
It is funny because I've had many conversations over the last 6 months. I mean, we're in early December 2025, in case anyone's listening a year or two later. But the real estate market generally sucks. Like the real estate market in most big markets across Canada and many in the US are very slow. And what that I hear has translated to is a hard time for brokerages, a hard time, for real estate companies, franchises, and including some tech providers, because people are not necessarily investing. They're nervous about what to do next. Some of them are treading water a little bit. And in some cases, like you're in an industry where many, and it's changing, but a lot of the leadership are, looking at retirement. And so they might not be thinking about like what integrations they can make, what improvements they can make. They're thinking about, okay, how can I make enough money so I can wind this down like comfortably, right? And so, and maybe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you just announced that RESAAS is profitable, and this is a pretty big deal, I would imagine. So while other companies probably in a similar lane to you are probably looking at the landscape and wondering, how do I be strategic? What do I do? Are we survival mode? What do you think is the biggest differentiator when it comes to momentum and kind of continuing to move forward despite perhaps tougher waters? I'm sorry, my questions are known to be rambly.
I'd expect nothing else. RESAAS has been fortunate the last couple of years, I would say, because we said yes to things that were a little bit beyond what we were focused on in a controlled manner. So a ton of things come across our desk. In the early days, we would say yes to everything, trying to help and trying to learn. But as we all know, if you say yes to everything, you spread yourself so thin that you're not as productive with that core thing you should be. Okay, so we learned to not say yes to everything. But I think we've got a good handle now on when something comes into us and it's worth exploring, and we get curious and we go down that hole and we ask enough questions to the right people, we can then get some kind of semblance as to, is this something we should really dive into? And to go back to commercial real estate, we weren't doing anything with commercial real estate 2 years ago.
Right.
We met somebody through an award that we won, and we were curious about how what they did in commercial real estate relates to what we do on the residential side. And that sparked an idea and a conversation and an introduction, and a random whiteboard session that followed the bouncing ball, led to a whole new division within the company. And it's opened up all of these doors, not just domestically in Canada, but now globally. And so it's one of those things where, a lot of people say, like, what are the lessons you've learned in business? What are the lessons RESAAS has benefited from over the years? And I think one of them is, the joke is like, say no to more and say yes to more, right? So say no so that you're not spreading yourself too thin, that you're focused on totally crushing it in that one thing that you want to be the expert in. And you say no to protect your time. But then you say yes to new opportunities, right? So like this, if I'd said, oh, no, I don't want to come on your podcast, we wouldn't be doing this. It wouldn't lead to all the things that are going to come from this, right, for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found saying yes tactically to the right opportunities and digging in and just asking endless questions, being super curious, has always, or so far at least, touch wood, has always yielded some pretty good outcomes for us. This year, we've been very fortunate. Business has been going very well. And, we're confident that's going to carry on through next year as well.
Well, good for you. And congratulations. I am wondering how, as we go into 2026, does being a Canadian company shape the way you look at how you operate your business or how you strategize around your business? Is there nuance there that might be worth unpacking?
Yes, lots.
Okay.
Where do we start? So in Canada, as a technology company, you can access federal grants and credits for doing cool stuff, right? Innovative developments, that kind of thing, R&D. Okay. In Canada, it's known here as SR&ED. It's a government program. If you're doing anything that's kind of at the cutting edge and you can prove it to the federal government, they'll either give you tax credits if you're a public company like RESAAS is, or they'll cut you a check and say, great job, Ashley, keep doing it. RESAAS has been working with the Department of Finance at the federal government in Canada for about 18 months to say, can you please level the playing field and let public companies access the same benefit as private companies? I.e., can public companies get a check in the mail too? And so that bill passed with the latest budget a couple of weeks ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So bang the drum for Canada. So so practically what does that mean? It means that if you are a company in Canada, private or public, doing real bleeding edge stuff, and you can prove it, and it's developing technology, it's developing science, it's developing whatever your business and your industry, and you're trying to push it forward, and you can prove that, then in practical terms, you get you can get up to 35 cents on the dollar back from the federal government. Okay, so if you're a technology company anywhere in the world, would you consider basing or at least having an operation in Canada so you can access those credits and those grants to fuel additional growth? Like, it's pretty compelling. And honestly, I think that's why a lot of the big tech companies from Silicon Valley and around the world have got offices in Vancouver, in Toronto, so that they can tap into that. And that's the kind of economic financial piece. The other piece is talent, right? You can bring people in overseas into Canada very easily compared to other countries. So big check in the box for why should a company be based in Canada if they're doing cool stuff like we are. The flip side to that, honestly, though, is that Canada is one country. There's 200 other countries. And how do you make your product, your business, or in our case, our stock, easily available to people in those countries, right? So I think we've solved the product side of things because we built a global technology that scales well. It can be accessed around the world on different devices, multilingual. I think that's pretty solid. As we look at the stock side of the business you were asking about earlier, we're listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Great. How do we broaden our audience? How do we let curious investors in the US, in Europe, that hear the story of RESAAS and say, oh my God, those guys are doing that? I want a piece of that company. How do we let them easily start to build a little position of ownership in the company through buying shares? And so for 2026, we're looking at that strategically, which is what can we do as a company to broaden our investor audience? How do we spread the word more widely? How do we let someone in those different countries around the world that discover what we're up to and get really excited like we are? If they want to buy a piece of the company, how can they do that easily? Right. And that's a challenge for public companies generally. So we're working on that.
And sorry to interrupt you, and this is again my ignorance, the challenge in that is mostly around awareness. There's not any like logistical or legal issue with that. I have no idea.
It's okay. Most people don't. And we didn't before we started. It's definitely, I mean, awareness for sure, right? But that's, you can solve that through media, through press, through campaigns, through a bunch of different channels. The practical piece, though, is if a company is listed on certain stock exchanges, so RESAAS is listed on a Toronto-based stock exchange, that means people in the UK can't easily buy it. People in the US cannot easily buy it. It's different. So for us as Canadians, if we read about Apple and they're trading on the NASDAQ in New York, we can all buy it, right? It's easy going into the US. What we found being a Canadian company on a Canadian stock exchange, it's hard for non-Canadians to buy those shares. Possible, but it's not as easy as it should be. And so we're just trying to, again, we've tried to bring the real estate industry together. We're trying to somewhat democratize access to our shares so that whether you're an investor in Canada and you've discovered RESAAS, or you're an investor in the US or Brazil or Australia or wherever, if you discover what we're up to, or even if you're a customer, we would like them to be able to build a position in the company if they want to as easily as they can.
I feel like this is going to lead into a part 2 discussion because I'm very curious about how you're thinking of positioning yourself to do that. And I love that
see where your mind is
language, yes, of democratizing access. So that's really interesting. And so it does seem like year over year, you're consistently thinking about what you can do next and build on momentum and build on top of what you've done and what you've accomplished and what the next steps are. And it also, I think I'm hearing you say you're also pretty integrated in some way with maybe advocacy around like policy and some of these, you mentioned around the public company refund that you talked about. So I'm wondering how you manage time a little bit with, operations, strategy, even some of this advocacy stuff. Like, how do you prioritize and how do you set the sort of strategic tone for a year? I'm going to digress a little bit for a moment. I think it's been so traditional to think, okay, what's our next maybe 3 to 5 year strategic plan? And now that just feels a little ridiculous to think about what we should be thinking about 5 years from now. And I'm sure many people have talked about this time frame, but I'm curious how you're thinking about that to set goals and parameters and objectives from a practical standpoint, but also a bit of a visionary standpoint. How do you think about that part today?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I think 3 and 5 year strategic plans still have their place. I just think the pace of change now with everything that is all around us means that the accuracy between now and what those plans look like is, not what it was. We have a different approach. We do the planning and we go all the way down to obviously quarterly and monthly. But the general question we ask ourselves is, what's in our way and how do we remove those barriers? So if our goal is whatever it is, what's stopping us achieving that? Because if there's nothing, let's go do it tomorrow, right? But if there are walls in the way, oftentimes they're artificial walls. And what we've seen a million times is that just because something is there, most people just accept it. And that isn't really how it should be. And so few people ask the questions or poke someone enough times to say, why is that the case? And usually the answer isn't very strong. So we got a taste for it early on by just curiosity and saying, why do we have to go around this and do it, And we found out that we could elicit some change. We're like, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. And so our mindset now is, let's work out what our plan is. Where do we want to be? And if there's anything in the way of that, who do we need to talk to? What's the strategy we need to form to try and overcome that? And it makes it sound very simplistic, but that's generally been our approach. What we found is not a lot of people are out of reach, right? You can generally find a way to get in touch with whoever you want to get in touch with these days. And generally, we've had good responses. Sometimes people ghost you, sometimes people say no, but then you find someone else to ask and you keep going and you keep grinding until you find the right person that isn't afraid to be a change maker. And if you keep that mentality, keep that hustle and that drive, and again, don't take on 1,000 things. Try and narrow your lane to do fewer things, but totally ace it. That's been a recipe we've used, and so far it's serving us quite well.
I kind of came into this conversation thinking, how do I not make this a real estate conversation? Because your product is clearly innovation in the real estate arena, and your customers are all in real estate. But Since we did a pretty good job, actually, I think, of covering the growth journey, and I think probably brought up some ideas that folks hadn't thought about before, which is wonderful. So thank you. I am going to go into the weeds a little in the real estate side.
Yeah, I knew you would.
You have access now to so much data and intelligence through your product and at an international scale. And now I'm assuming with the help of AI, you're able to use that data more efficiently and intelligently than you ever would have been able to before. I'm just curious what sort of signals you might be seeing with that data, thinking about the real estate landscape, whether here in Canada or just generally speaking, like any signals of shifts, whether that has to do with markets, whether it has to do with business practices or just the real estate ecosystem at all. Like, what are you thinking about for the next, say, 12 to 18 months that might be coming around the corner?
Now you're speaking our language.
Okay, tell me.
This is what we live and breathe for.
Okay, cool.
And the data we have is exactly what it shows. And so for years we've been doing this and gathering data. And the good thing about all this data we've got is it's unique, we own it, we can extrapolate it, we can present it in different formats to answer different questions. So give an example. One of our customers is a large residential brokerage, global footprint. And when we first got to meet them, we said, how much business do you do from one of your agents referring business to another one of your agents? And they just stared at us blankly and said, well, we don't know. And so like, okay, well, we can probably help you with that. So we stood up our platform, made a private label version for them, ran it for, I think it was 6 months, just for their company, just for actually a subset of agents within their company. Flew down to their office and we pulled all the data that our platform had gathered for one of their agents referring a client to another one of their agents. Generally, it's relocation. Sometimes it's second home purchase. And so we put on a map. And so it was 6 months worth of data. So there was, I don't know, a few thousand lines on this map of all these referrals, mainly in the US. And so imagine all these lines going across the US from somewhere to somewhere else. And there was this I'll never forget, there was this really thick line between Texas and Colorado. Okay. And they're like, And so we dug into it, drilled in. And it transpired that it was a lot of wealthy Texans buying condos and chalets in the Rocky Mountain ski resorts, right? So makes sense when you say it out loud. They had no idea.
Right.
Okay. So that's like a small example of how a really large company with a really impressive footprint didn't really have any clue how their own network was operating and what those signals were it should be telling them. So that was quite an eye-opening aha moment for them. And so off the back of that, what did they do? They went and recalibrated their M&A, their acquisition strategy. So in those markets where all this traffic is going, do we have a good enough presence? Do we need to open an office? Do we need to acquire an office or two? How do we do marketing? Are we speaking to the right people in the feeder markets, like in this case, it's Texas? So many of their departments' strategies and then tactics were altered based on the data. Right? So that's just one example of the kind of thing that we've been doing for a long time. I think in today's world of analytics and AI, it's just on rocket fuel now, right? So like in the world of, we have a few integrations with some pretty big data companies that allow us to show things at a much finer detail a lot more quickly. And then, as you were saying, do some predictions on some of that stuff. I'll tell you though, residential real estate data we've been gathering for over a decade and we've got like a really good stronghold on. Commercial data we're new at, been running our new commercial data exchange for about a year. We focus on the office asset class and the industrial asset class. So warehouses, factories, distribution centers, that kind of thing. And the source of the data is directly from the big real estate brokerages and institutions. And they're trusting us with their data. In return for them giving us their data, we let them access other participating brokerages' data. So we've really built, like, think back to when you were running or president of the board, this idea of reciprocity,
Yes.
right? It's been in the world of MLS and residential for forever.
Mm-hmm.
No one uses MLS in commercial real estate.
Yeah.
But RESAAS has brought this concept of reciprocity, which is put something in and you'll get back others in return.
Mm-hmm.
We've brought that to commercial real estate at an institutional level.
Mm-hmm.
And so the insights that our customers are getting from that and that we're seeing kind of over the fence at a macro level
Mm-hmm.
is fascinating. And so as you read the headlines about industrial real estate, office real estate, just general commercial real estate and how it's been, how it is right now, which isn't super strong, but what the outlook is, there's always the hopeful, it's going to get better in the next 3 to 5 years of course. But I think we can actually point to facts and trends based on data now that give a much more solid reason for the change rather than just hope and prayers. And
like this show is not a commercial for any type of company. Like there's no sponsorship fees or anything happening in the background, but it's probably worth exploring the RESAAS platform if you're in the commercial environment professionally. Yes. So like it may be something that a brokerage or a team that's doing high volume commercial real estate, they may not be as familiar with RESAAS and there might be a lot of value and there might be reports coming and things of that nature that might help them.
Yeah. Thank you. I would say anyone that's in the real estate sector, either on the residential side, even if you're freshly licensed as a residential realtor, join RESAAS. There's immediate value there and you'll probably get some new business come from it just from being part of the network. Like that's almost like a no-brainer. On the commercial side, this is a newer product for us. It's just over a year old, but I wish we'd done commercial earlier.
Yeah, fair.
And the insights it's generating already are fascinating, not to mention the efficiencies that it brings, the accuracy improvement that it yields. Like there's a lot of upside to it. But yeah, I'd say whatever the corner of real estate anyone that's listening is in, certainly worth checking out RESAAS.
Cool. Well, I will make sure that there are links to RESAAS in the show notes, links to Tom's profile, and ways to follow the company, follow him, and get to know a little bit more. Tom, I am wondering, as we're heading into the new year, besides the, big sort of themes you've talked about, what are you thinking about just maybe in just a couple sentences from a leadership perspective? Like, what are you excited about? There's a lot of craziness in the world. There's a lot of new innovations, like a lot of things to be excited about. Where's your head at from that perspective? And then we'll say goodbye.
This is Canada now.
It is.
Right? So we should give Canada a shout out for something it does very well compared to the US. And this is quasi real estate related, but it's mortgages. So in the US, if you buy a home and then you move, you cannot take your mortgage with you. Got to get a new product. In Canada, as we all know here, you can port a mortgage. So you get a great rate, you move house, you can take it with you, happy days. Not the case in America. So the American market has had a really tough time on the residential side of real estate because people that locked in a great rate in 2020, 2021, and staring down the barrel of a new rate today have been saying, I'm not moving, I'm going to sit on the sidelines. So lucky Canada that we have that great policy on the lending side. I think, what does next year look like? I think there's been a lot of turbulence in the, we're not going to make this political, right?
Well, we can talk about it's a weird time.
Yes, and turbulent. There's been so much change as it relates to cross-border policy over the past 12 months for all the reasons everyone's blue in the face with. I think that's starting to become less volatile, right? So if you track the VIX and the volatility, I think that's good. Generally it's less spiky, less often. And I think that should bring some harmony to our relationship between Canada and the US, which in turn helps us globally. On the housing side, rates continue to come down. I think there's projections of another cut or two in the kind of near term, which I think always is a good catalyst. I will just go back to something you said a few minutes ago, which is the real estate market here sucks. So I have a different perspective.
Please.
And I'll challenge you on this because you're the agent and I'm not. So the market sucks is the perception. We're saying that because there's high levels of inventory. It's a buyer's market. Sellers are not getting traffic through the door and opens. They're not getting enough offers. They're not getting offers at the number that they want. So there's a lot of sitting inventory. That doesn't necessarily mean from an agent perspective, the market sucks. It just means if you're a seller, your home's not going to sell in 5 minutes and you probably won't get over ask. I look at it differently from an agent perspective, which is if you're, as an agent, if you're able to work with sellers that are realists and you say to them, you're not going to list for the price you would have done 2 years ago. You're not going to get 20 offers like you would have done 2 years ago. And if you want to get this thing sold, we're not going to price it here. We're going to do this. And here's our strategy for it. The deal can still go through. Obviously, you need a buyer, but like you can still get, deals are still getting done. Yes, the media says the market sucks. Yes, it's a buyer's market. Yes, sellers are down in the dumps. Yes, there's a ton of inventory. All of those things are true. But I try to encourage agents to not just blindly be depressed by the headlines as it relates to the industry. RESAAS has got hundreds of thousands of agents. So we have the elite agents. We have a lot of the new agents that are coming in and they're still wet behind the ears and they're figuring things out. And they read the headlines and they see the inventory levels and they're thinking, oh no, what have I done? But there is still a path through it as an agent, as a good agent, as an agent that's not afraid to do things differently, where you can still get deals done.
Yeah.
I say that to you as the agent. How do you feel?
Oh, it's funny. Well, to be fair, I'm not selling. So, but I'm basically all my friends are realtors and my spouse is a realtor and with, his family's realtors. So I see it and I hear it and I get a sense of where it is. There's a shift happening in terms of volume, but that comes down to a lot more into your point, especially for the newer professionals who maybe haven't seen different types of markets. Lean into the data because the data is going to tell you what's really happening. So look at your MLS, see what's happening, see what's selling, what are things selling for? And then also recognize the upside in terms of like if someone's selling a property and maybe they did, lose out on $150,000 that they would have had at a previous time. They also have a lot more opportunity in front of them if they're buying.
Right.
So that's what it is. But it is interesting. And I think that for professionals, it's important to lean into the real information and not worry so much about the narrative. But the narrative has been as such generally.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And it's hard not to be affected by it. I feel there's so many agents. There's too many agents. But I think these are when it's a trying time in the industry, which it is at the moment, I think these are the times when it's the hardest to not listen to the noise, but it's the most important time to not listen to the noise and focus on the process, focus on the data, lean on your brokerage community, lean on your team, lean on sources of data like MLS, like RESAAS, like your peers, and execute your strategy. And the strategy is different, right? It's not like 4 years ago where you could roll out your door and you'd land a client and it would be sold over asking in a few minutes. Different times, but it's, we see all these conversations inside RESAAS between agents and you add sentiment analysis to it. So like, what's the vibe? And it's been a big negative sentiment we've seen over the last 2 years, right? Like the market's getting tougher, things aren't moving. There's so much competition on the market because there's so many listings. It's a buyer's market. In the US where we're biggest, as I was saying, buyers can't bring their previous mortgage if they have a low rate. So there's a lot of headwinds. But what we've seen is agents that to us seem elite agents who often lean on coaches are so disciplined to a process that they're getting the same headlines, the same negative vibes as everyone else, but they're iterating and they're believing in their coaching and the process that they stick to, and it's still yielding turnover. It's still yielding transaction volume for them.
Yeah.
You're not getting the crazy price points. You're not doing the big headlines. I sold this in a few minutes from 20 offers, this much over asking. Different market, but they're still getting deals done. And as you and I both know in this industry, it's about getting deals done and helping your clients allow them to move if they need to.
And leaning into innovation during harder times or leaning into how to work on your business. And so I had got my start in January 2008. So it was an interesting time.
Okay.
Around the same time you started with RESAAS. And I remember very clearly the evolution and emergence of the internet to social media and really leaned in, and that helped me set the path for my career. So it's the AI era now. That's probably one of the key things I'd be thinking about. So, and that's really why I'm doing this show, is to keep the optimism turned up and help Canadians in particular think about what we can do to make next year better than last year.
Love that.
Yeah. So on that note, I just want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank Tom for joining us here on Canada Now. For listeners, please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on whichever platform you're listening to. And if you haven't already, check us out on YouTube. Link is in the show notes. Watch, like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Until next time, have a wonderful day.